Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Animation Station podcast. I am your co-host, Joseph, and unfortunately, Tiasha couldn't be here today, but we have a wonderful person who's kind of stepping in to help us out with the podcast today. Another Joe.
Another Joe. There has to be
Yes.
two.
Yes. And Joe here is helping us out with the podcast. He's another member of our Elite 23 Global company and a guy who, not only do we just share a name, but we also share a lot of interests.
Yeah, actually, we've been to the same. You went to the same college as me, right?
Yeah. You went a little bit before me, but we also run into each other going to San Diego Comic-Con and a bunch of other conventions.
A bunch of other places. When you're in this kind of we're making this kind of podcast, you find each other other places all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Aligned interests. So the thing that we're doing today is that we normally cover this every couple of months. Me and Tiasha did it before, where we just simply take a little bit of time after, a couple seasons. Now that fall is ending now that summer is ending and fall is coming up, we usually just take a little bit of time to talk about what we've been watching lately and just really kind of reminisce and just talk about our favorite shows. Now, on this podcast, we normally talk about anime, American cartoons, and things of that sort, where we kind of share our interests of just animations. But today, we're kind of changing things up a little bit. Normally next week, we'll probably have Tiasha on again to share her thoughts and share what she's been watching lately, but today it's just me and my other Joe.
Other Joe. I really wanted to maybe change the name to JoJo Show, but show is with OE, but then it's shoe at that point, and I just kind of lost the idea after that.
Yeah. So before we get started, we talk about the subjects today of the podcast. Let's get our listeners to kind of know about the other Joe a little bit. And just give yourself a little bit of background, give a little 411 and something that we do with anytime we have a new guest on the show.
All right, where do I start?
Yeah, so really first things, overall, one things that we always share, the listeners always know what I like and what I like to watch. Same thing with Tiasha. So we're gonna, start you off quickly. What do you prefer mostly? Is American cartoons or Japanese anime?
That's real tough. Because right now I've been watching much more anime than any American cartoons, and that just might be because it's just the subject matter is more of what interests me when I see it on Netflix or Hulu. But I'm not a stranger to cartoons. I'm gonna say anime just to have the easy question out there. But Courage the Cowardly Dog and Dexter's Laboratory are still amazing shows.
Yeah, absolutely. For some of the things, since you decided to go with anime, I kind of know what it is that I like so much. People, listeners know that I'm more of the fight scene, action, anime kind of guy. But what is it that some of your favorite things about anime and what keeps you interested?
I'm a little all over the board. I watched Fairy Tail for some nice fight scenes when it came out. But it was a lot of the same thing after a while, so I lost interest. So I have to have a little bit of everything. It has to change it up. My Hero Academia is a really good example of the fight scene kind of pacing I like, but I also like other shows that are a little more there are no action scenes, it's just dramatic in some kind of way. An older I believe Netflix show anime was Violet Evergarden, was one that had little to no actually fighting scenes, and it was all just about a soldier double amputee recovering after the war had ended and what she does with her life afterward, and that was just really dark and heart pulling, and I couldn't put it down. I loved that show.
Yeah, it was definitely something that drew you in, and it was just something dealing with the everyday, and also it was kind of relatable being with soldiers who are returning from wars and dealing with PTSD and just them trying to get back to their lives or get their lives back after dealing with so much conflict.
And that's a big that's the main arc of the entire show is who this person is outside of war after she grew up. She was a child soldier because anime, everyone's 14 years old. But that's a laughing at child soldier. Anyway,
it's just anime having surrounded around teenagers and never having not enough adults.
Yeah, it's always kind of a thing in my head. If I'm watching a show and if their age isn't important to the story, I just kind of internalize, all right, they're like 24. Because,
Hmm.
like, oh, I'm 14, but you're also like a world class strategist. You're crazy strong. And, like, it's just what you do. You look more like a 24-year-old than any,
Hmm.
like, 14-year-old who went to war, got double amputated, went back
Yeah,
home, became a
it's
Ghost
pretty.
Rider. Like,
Yeah, so it's just pretty much the way they're drawn as well. Like they look more like an adult than a
yeah.
teenager.
I guess that's kind of one of the things that anime does. Like you're either a child or an adult.
Hmm.
It's hard to get the middle ground. Otherwise, you just look like a tall child or a small adult. Like it's I don't know anatomy super well, which is sad coming out of an art school. But
Yeah.
there is a middle ground that anime seems to have trouble capturing, other than just changing their height.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's I think I don't I mean I wouldn't say it's common amongst a lot of artists, but yeah, I think it's because that middle ground is not as entertaining. I think a lot of it has to do with that because studying anatomy and looking at the way the human figure is, if you look at someone who's 15, 14, 15 years old, like they don't have much. Like in I mean, there are some exceptions, obviously, but you look at like the average teenager, who's in middle school or a freshman, sophomore, which is where a lot of these kids are in these animes. You would look at them and you would like, well, they don't really have a whole lot of muscle tone. They're not really developed. Like their body figure is very, very plain.
Yeah.
Like they're very square shaped. Like there's not a whole lot of shape or figure to them versus like a 20-something-year-old or like a small child. Like those are more easier to draw because they're more developed or
More
more developed.
dynamic.
Yeah, and more interesting to draw versus like a teenager because they're very boxy. They have very small arms, very small legs. Their torsos very rectangular shape.
Their body's growing and it's one leg's longer than the other, but my torso's longer than both.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just I think it's because as far as like just looking at art of characters, they're more interesting to see them drawn as an adult or as a child because they're just more interesting that way. But getting a little bit back to what we were talking about, since you were talking about art school, what other things outside of like the anime, since we kind of covered that ground a little bit, what sort of relatable interests do you have to say the art industry?
Well, I'm trying to develop an eye for 3D art, with mostly not success, but we'll get there. That's what I went to college for. I think it's what we went to college for.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just different kind of 3D art stuff to get to that point where I can sustain myself. Outside of maybe like actual visual art, I do play around with a guitar for a bit. I've been playing music since a very young age. So, like looking in my room right now, there's a guitar, there's a bass, there's an electric guitar, there's a violin, there's a ukulele, a trumpet's hidden around somewhere. Like I've got a lot of instruments that I mostly know how to play, but I'm not super great at.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that was interesting. I was thinking, I'm like, did you raid a band store or what? What's the deal? No, but
A lot of it was just like me. I consider like my guitar and all that stuff. That's a musical instrument. It's really fun to play, and it's a skill I want to develop. A lot of the other ones, like the ukulele specifically, that's a toy. I found a cheap one, and I'm
yeah.
just kind of like, and I just like pick it up, play it for a little bit. Like, all right, that was fun. And I put it down. I like for a while. I actually going back to animation. I learned a lot of the SpongeBob songs.
Okay.
They have a lot of like Tiny Tim is the act is the not the actor is the musician for the like the really fun ukulele songs you hear on that. I would try to sing it, but it wouldn't be fun to hear. But it's
No, no.
it's like happy, wonderful, da da da. Coffee's only a dime. Living in the sunlight. That song. Really hard on ukulele, but it was just kind of a fun little thing to pick up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that sounds interesting. Yeah, because I mean, it seems like that's part of it. With there's always a lot of good music, especially when it comes to anime.
Hmm.
Something that I've always told people is like, what makes a good anime? I'm like, well, it's the intro, it's the theme song, it's the opening song of the show. Because you look at them, especially Hero Academia. I mean, it's something that we've talked about a lot on the podcast, but I think that's due to some of its success. Is just like the song is just the openings of all their songs are just really, really catchy, and that's something that we're going to dive a little bit more into when we talk about some of the shows that we've been watching
Mm-hmm.
once we move along in the episode. But a lot of them are just really entertaining opening theme songs. I mean, there's a lot of times where I'll either be at the gym or on the treadmill or something, and I'm listening to the opening songs on
Oh.
YouTube because they're just like like to get you pumped.
Some of
And
them, some of them make you feel like you're on the treadmill and you're listening to the My Hero Academia theme. You feel awesome, like
Yeah,
you're
it's
running
just-
from something crazy and explosions are happening around you. It's
Yeah.
great.
So now that we got a little bit of information about you and a little something for the listeners, gonna have a picture in their head of who you are. Let's get on with the show and talk a little bit about why we're here today. And again, falling back to what I said earlier, every once in a while we just want to take some time to talk about what we've been watching and sharing. Just pretty much the reason why we started this podcast, me and Tiasha, is just to simply sit and talk about our love of the show. That's what we used to do before we started, and we still kind of do it every once in a while, but this is our way of kind of sharing it with everyone else and just talking about what we've been watching and what shows we just love to enjoy. And for our listeners, enter in the comments what you guys have been watching and what you guys really enjoy and why you like them so much. So
Yeah,
we're gonna go ahead and get
I need more. I need more recommendations. I finished what I was recently watching.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's some of the best things about anime is that there's just no shortage of shows to watch. It's just a matter of having to either listen to them with the subtitles or actually have English dub. But a rule that we have here on the show is guess first.
Oh.
So we're gonna allow the Joe 2 here
All right.
to go ahead and start us off and. With the first show is what have you been watching lately since the listeners actually know what have been watching since the last time we recorded, which was back in June. You being a new guy, you can go back as far as you want, with whatever it is that you've been watching. It doesn't have to be entirely current, but just some of the things that you've been watching lately and you want to talk about today.
Oh god, like I had one set up, but that was like I literally finished it like a week ago. I'm just gonna go with that because I don't want to get caught in the annals of my brain.
Yeah.
But what I just finished, it's a new anime. It's one that caught my attention because it's about music. Because I just talked about I have like a million instruments in my room right now. This is a Carol and Tuesday. It's a show that's it's about two girls that are of course because two like teenage girls because anime. They kind of meet out of circumstance, and one plays the guitar really well, the other one plays the piano really well, and they just kind of form a band, and it shows them kind of gaining recognition. I was gonna say slowly, but a lot happens in a very short amount of time for them. It goes on like they're just like the oh god, Carol is the pianist. She has a keyboard like an electrical one, but she wanted I want to play the song that we made, but on a grand piano. So they break into an orchestra house and then just use their piano for a second and sing the song. And it's a beautifully catchy song. Every episode comes with at least one kind of musical performance, especially near the end where they kind of toss in two or three depending on the episode you're on. And every one of those songs, I believe every one of them is original. But at the very least, I know that the one Carol and Tuesday, the titular characters, all of theirs is original, and they're kind of a folky, very smooth kind of song as it goes through. It's really good just to listen to. I hope they have a soundtrack on Spotify or something like that because I'd love to actually save them. I guess it's a good show on its own. It has amazing writing. The music is great. It's all from the guy who made Cowboy Bebop and I think Samurai Champloo. And he has like so much experience and power with music in his shows that it has to be that good. And it kind of falls in like I have a weakness for that kind of stuff is what I'm trying to say. Like a while ago, a long time ago, I watched an anime called K-On! Where it's about a group of girls, of course, because anime, form a small band in school at a club at school, and they just start it's just at first it was about music, and that's what got me in because I did that. I was in a club that that played music in their same style or similar style when I was in high school. So I'm like, oh my god, I did all of this. But
Yeah, I can relate.
but one thing I couldn't relate to is like they were usually just kind of hanging out after school, eating like mini pastries and drinking tea. Like,
Yeah, because I mean, it seems like it would be hard to, because you got to think a lot of this stuff comes from, light novels, and so everything can't just be like band practice every time, or
right,
a gig.
That's tough to visually show music over and over
Mm-hmm.
again. I think the only time I've seen that is the Scott Pilgrim comics. At the very least, I've only read like the first one or maybe the beginning. There it shows their band practice when Knives Chow shows up, and it's a huge like display of images, and it's like very kind of dynamic movement as they're singing, and you actually have the actual notations of how to play that song on the page, and it was a really beautiful screen. But I don't know how long you can make that cool. Like, I go into another band practice next week, and then another one next week, and it's kind of all the same at this point. They kind of have to diversify to other things. And for Kaon, that happens to be drinking tea. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but going back to the Carol and the Tuesday, one of the girls is named Tuesday, which I find hilarious.
Yeah.
But let's dive in a little bit too about this is on Netflix, so it's like you can just binge it in a weekend, because it's just it's 12 episodes, the typical half hour. So over a weekend you can just binge it and watch it in just like one sitting, if you like it that much. But with it being same creators who made Cowboy Bebop, which is a great one on its own, the artwork of it, what would you say it's a little bit like roughly the same as Cowboy Bebop, or there's like some minor differences between it?
There is it's on par. It does look really good. It looks a little less dirty and grungy. I think that's partly because of the style of the whole thing. It takes place in like maybe 30 years in the future on Mars, where everything's a utopia. But it's also, I think it's just because animation process and resolution has been upscaled since, and it just looks better out of the technology we have.
Yeah, there's always like a ton of one thing I'm seeing a lot of is like, special effects, particle effects, 3D. And
oh yeah, they do stand out a little bit if you know what to look for, but there are little scenes that use 3D animation for like the anime 3D animation, mostly for when they have a close-up to one of the two characters' hands as they play the piano or the guitar, because that can be incredibly hard to animate by hand. So I imagine they just have a 3D model somewhere of just Carol's hands as she plays the piano, maybe.
Oh man, that's hilarious. But one thing is that I was meaning to ask you about the show, with it being just one season so far and available on Netflix, what would you say is like the main big like hook thing, outside of the music?
It's just kind of if you're into like a slice of life kind of anime, just two people dealing with the problems for their day. It just so happens that these two people want to be, or like strive to be, known throughout the world. It's very much like that. Like, one of the problems early on is neither of them have a job, and because it's just them, I believe Tuesday runs away from her family, and Carol loses her job on the first episode. So like, oh, we don't have money. Where are we going to get money? And there's an episode about that. They have an episode where they try to make a music video, so they find the cheapest AI robot that claims it can, like, oh, I can totally make a music video for you. All I just need is this, and alcohol, because he claims that like he needs it to as a fuel. But in truth, he's just like he's watching TV and anime on his phone, claiming it's research for like recording and directing while drinking beer all day.
It sounds like Bender from Futurama.
That sounds about right.
I mean, does the quality of the alcohol, the higher the proof, does it like allow him to go longer and like the higher quality?
I think the point is that it was a lie, because he never really bothers. He just has the same probably cheap beer the entire his entire run through his through the show, and he doesn't complain.
Oh my god. It's totally Bender.
Yeah. Well, what's the I think the beer in Futurama is lowbrow or something like that.
Yeah. Jeez, that's ridiculous. That's kind of fun. No, but it sounds like a great show, and sounds like there's a lot of opportunity for like catchy songs. But of course, they get fired and they're down in the dumps. Like, let's start a band. Like, with most people, when they have like nothing going for them and no jobs, they're like, let's just start a band. And even though we have no money, we have no reliable income, because we're just gonna start a band. Get it? We'll make it. Oh my god, I don't know how many times I've heard something like that. Mm-hmm. But more or less it was somebody saying how they wanted to make their own video game. Or now it's like people, because it's so easy to make like a comic book now, so a lot of people are trying to be like independent publishers or independent game developers. And I just hear so many people saying that, it's like, oh, I got this great game idea. It's like,
and it's like, say that idea is great, sure, it's still really hard. Like, you can work really hard on a song, on a podcast, on a video game, and you can work really hard on it, and it could be great. But you can work really hard on it, and then it still might end up like okay at best. Like that's kind of the hard part, is you can put your heart and soul into something that you think is beautiful, but it just doesn't catch on.
Exactly.
And that's kind of, I guess that's kind of the hook, as you were asking before, of what the show is. Like these two people are trying their hardest to do something that they do really well, but it doesn't matter how well or how much you try. It matters that if it gets attention.
Exactly. But we're giving it attention here now on this podcast.
Yeah.
We're giving this show some attention. All right. All right, that's pretty cool, and it's on Netflix, so I'll probably just binge it over the weekend. Yeah. It's like 6 hours total. So
if you don't love that first song on episode 1,
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so moving on, I'm gonna talk about now something that I've been willing to share, and something that's been ongoing. We talked about it a little bit on this show once before, and you brought it up since you were talking about Fairy Tail earlier. The show is from the same creators, and that's Black Clover.
Oh, okay, cool.
So it shares a lot of the similarities as Fairy Tail, is that has just a string of characters, even though it kind of surrounds a few protagonists, but there's still like a ton of characters, and it deals with magic, same as Fairy Tail, and instead of guilds like it does with Fairy Tail, you have these magic knights. So a little bit of background about the show is that there's this kingdom called the Clover Kingdom, and within the kingdom there's like these, similar to guilds or factions, there's like these little units of magic knights, because everyone is capable of using magic, save for a select few, who is the main protagonist. Excuse me.
Is there a reason that he can't
Well, there's that mystery behind it.
Oh, okay.
So Asta is the main character. You can say he's like the main character. And also which is like someone who's like the same age as him. Pretty much, you can argue they were born on the same day, because they were both left at an orphanage on a church doorstep, like at the same night.
Yeah.
And it's in the pilot, so there's no telling if they were from the same person, or if they were just happened to be left there on the same night. Like, nobody knows. Mm-hmm. But the show has done really great, and I remember the last time that we talked about it, and the last time that we were talking about this show and the ones that we've been watching recently, because it's about this week on this recording, it's gonna show its 100th episode.
Nice. That's a lot of episodes.
Yeah, I mean, it's total binge worthy, and it's crazy. And because the person who created Fairy Tail, like, they have like a ton of it. Like, they just wrapped this past season, and they just did the final series this year, and they were like over, I think it was like at its completion, it was like over like 250 episodes, I think, for Fairy Tail. Like, it was ridiculous, and plus all the movies. But for this one, the studio that's making it, they've been working nonstop, because they started in 2000 and I want to say 17, I believe. Mm-hmm. So let me double check. Okay, yeah, it was 2017, and they just been going nonstop, like every week since it started. They've just been
no season breaks. Wow,
no season breaks. So like, that's what's, I think maybe like once or twice they skipped like a week, but I seriously doubt it.
Give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe like, hey, I'm tired this week. You can handle not having Black Clover, deal with it.
Yeah, like, I feel really bad for the people at the studio, because they've had no breaks for almost like 2 years now. It's crazy. Um, right now, I believe there's 21 volumes of the actual manga itself.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of material that they've had to go by, and I've been watching it, and it's been really, really exciting from the past, few months that I've been watching it.
Do you feel that
It's
because you talked about like it was the same guy who made Fairy Tale, and Fairy Tale's coming to a close, or it
mm,
did? You said the final season was
yeah,
not
the
so long
final
ago.
season was they just wrapped just a little bit ago.
That's crazy. Is this kind of like Fairy Tale 2, like its replacement? I'm the idea is to do the same thing but with new characters in a new way.
There's a lot of similarities. One from the artwork, but also like the fight scenes. The fight scenes are really, really good, but you see a lot of similarities as far as the actual lore and content. It just seems like they just kind of change things up a bit. Like instead of guilds where anyone can join in Fairy Tale, the Wizard Guild. In here, they have magic knights who protect the kingdom
Mm-hmm.
that they're in. It's called the Clover Kingdom, and within the factions, there's all these different, sort of uh, little guild halls, I guess you can say, and people audition to impress the captains who are like the leaders
Mm-hmm.
of them, and they get recruited and then they get implemented into these different guilds of the Magic Knights, and they kind of work independent from like the military and the army and the citizens, but they protect them, they police it. But with each different faction, there's a certain reputation, so everyone wants to get into a different uh, knight guild.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, because whatever which one they get in kind of gives them fame, gives them respect. And it's like, oh, you're a member of the Golden Dawn, which is like the number one. Asta, the main character, he's a member of the knights that are the Night Guild that's known as the Black Bulls. Like everyone is a color. They
Mm-hmm.
have like purple orcas. They have the
Silver
like teal.
snakes, blue barracudas.
Yeah. The green mantis. Like they sound like villains, but they're all like a color and an animal. And there's just like all these different ones. And the Golden Dawn are like the ones. And there's Silver Eagles. All these different factions. But the thing is, that's really great is that there's this class warfare sort of within the kingdom. Like you have because there's a king, so you have the nobles, you have the middle class kind of people or like merchants, and then you have like the poorest of the poor, which is the main character Asta.
Mm-hmm.
And like they're from like a little small village, and they immediately get looked down upon because they're poor.
Okay.
which is really messed up when you stop and think about it. But some of the things that have happened lately is that there's like this terrorist organization called the Eye of the Midnight Sun, and they're kind of like this terrorist organization who are filled with a lot of strong magical people, and they've just been kind of terrorizing the kingdom. And later you kind of find out one of the great things I love about this anime is that, not besides the fight scenes and the concept of magic, is that the creator really expands to all the other side characters.
Oh,
They're
interesting.
like you have the main characters, and then you have like all these B, C, D, even E characters, and every once in a while you'll get flashbacks, and you'll kind of get like a little bit of a backstory on some of these other characters that might get like an episode.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the guild, like the Black Bull is the one who's Asa's in, there's about a dozen or so other people who are within this guild, and you kind of get a backstory about all of them. You Every once in a while you kind of figure out who they are, what they're about, and where they come from. And every once in a while they'll get like their own episode.
That's interesting.
Yes.
That does kind of remind me of like Fairy Tale has the same, like they have the main roster and then there's BCD characters otherwise. One of the things that I kind of fell short on is a lot of the C kind of characters in the back. They didn't get that development. They were just like, oh, I'm just a guy who smokes.
Yeah, yeah. They'll just be in the background drawn, and they'll have a few lines here and
Yeah.
there.
It's
Yeah.
really cool that the show actually takes the time to let everyone get a little turn. Like everyone's fleshed out. Everyone knows who they are.
Yeah, and you kind of they get a little bit of development,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of learn a little bit about them and who they are and where they're from, and it's actually kind of cool and interesting. Now, mind you, you'll never see them or hear from them again, but I mean, you'll still get a little something. And the one thing that's really really exciting recently is that this past couple of episodes, some stuff has really come to light, and it goes like way back, and there's a lot of mystery still. Like that's something that I really really like about the show, is that there's so much mystery behind everything, and it's being answered little by little. Like I kind of hate it, but I kind of like it because it's keeping me intrigued.
Hmm.
I'm like I want to find this, I want to know this, I want to know that, and it's giving you answers, and it's getting flushed out.
Okay. As
And
long as it
but
kind of like it answers a question every so often, it doesn't keep you on the hook for the entire show.
yeah,
That's something to keep watching.
yeah, and the especially these past couple of episodes, there's been a big twist, and because at first you thought you knew something, and then you kind of did, you guessed it right, but it was like something else too as well. And they get you with this twist at the end, and then you kind of get like these mixed emotions, and you're just like, what? And now it's like things are starting to unfold from that twist. So that's kind of like where I'm at right now with this 100th episode, is that you're kind of on this cliffhanger of like, okay, what happens now? And also there's this trend now happen. Well, I wouldn't say it's a trend, but a lot of studios now are not making people wait for like the dub version of an anime.
Oh, simulcast.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
usually they'll be like a couple weeks behind from the Japanese subtitled versions, but usually like now, like you don't have to wait like an entire season, or you don't have to wait like 6 months
Hmm.
after the season ends to get like your English version. Like they're trying to release them,
Yeah.
either simultaneously or like a little bit behind.
That is like super appreciated from me, because like if I were give I'll watch a sub if I have to, but I'd
Hmm.
prefer a dub. Like usually I'll stick around with what I start with. Like One Punch Man, I'm watching as subtitled because that's just how I watched it first.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's something that they're just doing. Like there's not going to be an English version,
yeah,
probably not till it's ended.
and I'm super okay with that. But
Yeah.
what's awesome is when it's, oh, by the way, you don't have to wait another 2 months for the English voice cast to catch up. Because
Hmm.
if I'm getting that offered, like I'm tempted to wait those 2 months, but it hurts every day of those 2 months
Yeah,
to have to.
because you want to watch the next episode. You're like, oh, it's subtitled.
Yeah, especially if there's a cliffhanger.
Yeah, exactly. So,
And
but usually, like they're doing a pretty good job. Usually,
yeah.
it'll be like 3 weeks, and then like the English version will come up. So, yeah, the studio is really hard at work, and it's a it's a show that I really like, and I appreciate them like with the whole them just nonstop, no breaks in between. Because with 100 episodes, that's usually like 3 seasons,
Yeah.
or so. There are 4 seasons. 100 usually, depending on if it's the 12 or 24. And yeah, they say it's like, oh, this is the third season, this is the fourth season, or whatever. But it's like you guys haven't had a
Yeah.
break. You
This
guys
is
haven't stopped.
one long season and we owe you so much for it.
Yeah, which you can kind of say the same thing about Fairy Tale. I mean, Fairy Tale did have breaks, but they're really long too. They're like, I mean, the Fairy Tale is on Netflix, but at least the first season. But that's like 50 episodes, and that's like, oh, this is the first
Mhm.
season, but it's like that's 50 episodes.
When I got
So
to when I got through Fairy Tale, I got to episode 150 something before I kind of like I felt I was done. Uh,
yeah,
and mostly getting a little detailed, it was because the Butt Jiggle Gang came back, because
oh yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
cannot stand them.
Yeah, and that's the thing here. Like, even though in Black Clover there is a few funny looking people, but there's nothing as ridiculous as some of the things that you got in Fairy
Hmm.
Tale. And there's like a little bit of romance, but it's still kind of funny.
Okay. I mean, like
But
I
because
have nothing against romance as long as it's well
yeah,
done. That's great.
yeah, because in here like it's kind of in there, but kind of isn't. But in Fairy Tale, it was just like, come on already, It's not like we all know what's happening. It's like, come on, hurry up and admit it already. But in here, they kind of at least, they hint at it, and they kind of like move on a little bit with it and stuff. It's not as it's not as
Hmm.
corny or as cheesy as Fairy Tale was, because there's a lot of mature things. It's a little bit more adult, I would say, not as such as like profanity, but there
Hmm.
is things like deaths And
Ooh, because
you know,
Fairy Tale had some dark moments, but everyone was mostly okay.
yeah, like there was never anything like serious about it. But
Hmm.
in this, you know, it's definitely a lot more serious, definitely a lot more mature.
I think the
Uh,
closest, at least from what I heard, the closest thing that Fairy Tale got to something really dark, and I guess this is kind of spoilers, but this is in the first half of a anime that ran like 300 and something episodes that's just
yeah.
finished. But what's his name? It was the big dude that can transform. I don't remember his name, but his sister had died before the show started.
Hmm.
And the way you hear about that it's the way you see it happen in a flashback is awful. I was
Yeah.
surprised the show went there because I'm so used to having such a light and colorful. The only people that get hurt are the people that deserve it, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden, like I guess I already said spoilers, but the guy who transformed managed a full body one, and that kind of took over, and he became a demon for a while. And the last thing that his sister said was like, "I forgive you" or "I love you" or something like that, and he just destroys her, and then she's
Hmm.
never seen from again for a while.
Yeah.
But and that's it got dark, but that was like the only thing, and that made it sting. That made it like stand out. But the show is mostly very soft edged and it doesn't hurt you, except for
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
one episode.
Yeah. We're this one in Black Clover. Like, there's a little bit. I wouldn't say so much as death, but there is definitely like mutilation and like permanent injury that
Oh, okay.
happens. You know, between like the characters and stuff. And there's people who get knocked down and hurt pretty crazy. And there's like a lot of uh I would say like personal conflict, you know, between someone doing something that's like right, you moral conflict about what's happening in the situation. Like I said, there's a lot of class division, you know, there's a lot of division between the factions. Like, these people are all work for the same kingdom, they're all citizens of this kingdom, but yet it's kind of like people with their sports teams. You know, it's just like, you know, you're a Black Bull, I'm a member of the Golden Dawns, I'll like, I'm not even supposed to talk to you.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they self segregate just because that they're within a different Magic Knights guild. You know,
Mm-hmm. It's
so
I'm supposed to hate you, so I just am. I don't have a reason. I just
exactly. So there's a lot of that, and then also surprisingly, there's race in within this
interesting.
one too. So that's kind of what's developing now, is
It's a bold move.
that there's isn't just humans within this world now. There's another different races that are starting to pop up and develop now. So now you're seeing this conflict. Um, but I think we'd spent a little bit of enough time on that, a little
Oh
bit.
wow, looking at my timer.
Yeah, but that's something that I've been watching lately, and it's still ongoing, and it's a great show. I can't get enough of it. But let's circle back to you, and we'll talk about another show that you want to talk about that you've been watching lately.
Uh, I had another show in mind, but I think I'm gonna roll with the like non-aggressive, very like slice of life shows. Now, I dipped a little bit like, oh, this Carol and Tuesday's a show that's not really like, it's not actiony, it's very dramatic. I'm gonna dive full way into that side of the drama end. Not too long ago, God, maybe a few months ago, I just finished watching Quintessential Quintuplets, which it shows like I watched Fairy Tail, like Dragon Ball Z, like all this action stuff, all the like My Hero Academia, but I'm also super into this little like chill. You don't need to fight to be interesting. You don't need to fight to be dramatic. Like shows like Carol and Tuesday and Quintessential Quintuplets, where it's just a cutesy harem anime.
Yeah,
It
because
Go ahead.
Lord knows there's not enough of those.
Lord knows there's not. This one's really good though.
Yeah.
Where like a lot of ones like when I say like harem anime, you would probably assume there's a lot of like fan service and a lot of like oh my god, we just fell like this. And,
Hmm.
this one avoids that. This one's trying to be a legit love story. And the way I describe it to friends who might want to watch it are it's How I Met Your Mother but anime.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I guess it does have some comedic moments, but the whole thing is there's a guy he's poor and he's really smart though. He spends all of his time studying because he has to. If he gets low grades, I think he loses his ability to stay in school. I believe it's college, maybe high school.
Yeah.
And he happens to, one of the ways he makes money is tutoring, and he doesn't have any students at this point because the year is new, and he just so happens to find like a job where like, hey, train my daughter, and it names the daughter by name. Which in Japan they use the last name when you're not super familiar with somebody,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
and I'll pay you 5 times the amount. And if you know what quintuplets means, you kind of understand where this is going. He shows up, and the letter meant my 5 daughters, all of which share the same last name, and they're all just awful.
yeah.
I think they make it a thing like one is good, kind of good at one subject, and that's kind of one of the things you find out. One of the things you find out about how to teach them is like, all right, hey, if you're really good at history, like feel free to talk to your sisters about that, and because they all hate him at first, so they don't want to listen, but they'll listen to their sisters. And the whole show is framed around a flashback of the main character, the guy's wedding day when he marries one of the quintuplets. So every so often it'll kind of tease at it, and every time the bride is on screen, it's covered up by the veil. She's not facing the camera. She's one of five quintuplets. So it's like, okay, that could be any of them, despite the fact that it doesn't have the right hair color for what's her face. But that's kind of like, that's the main draw. Like, oh my God, who's he gonna marry? Oh.
Yeah. Okay. I see where the How I Met Your Mother element is in there.
Exactly.
Which honestly was, I mean, it was one of the shows I would talk about people getting off a little off track here earlier, and people would complain about the Game of Thrones season finale. I would like, have you ever watched How I Met Your Mother season finale?
You see,
that is the worst show ever.
People, I'm gonna die on this hill here. I like both the Game of Thrones ending and the How I Met Your Mother ending.
No, I did too, but I'm just saying, like, because like people they left you on this. As far as like How I Met Your Mother, like they left you on this idea of what the show was gonna be. And then, like the last couple of episodes, they just throw this other thing in your face, and it's like,
I would have loved an additional season with the mother character before the big twist at the end, because that would have made the show perfect to me. Because then you kind of get that like, oh, this is what they're like together. At least
like you hooked me on this idea of what this whole thing's gonna be, and then you just like twist it at the end just for your own personal amusement. It's like, no. But
I'm really hoping that doesn't happen with quintessential quintuplets, because it's a good show. It's, I guess you would call it a guilty pleasure, because this is like hardcore into the romance stuff that me as a boy, like, I'm not allowed to touch that stuff. But I'll admit to watching it, but like maybe not to all the people.
yeah.
Which I say on a podcast, just going on the internet. So there goes that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but with this, I mean, this one's a fairly new show, and it's, it was earlier this year, and it's getting a second season.
It has
been announced, which is really, really great, because it's hard for shows, anime, especially within anime, to get a second season. It's just something that normally happens, like it'll be like a couple of years before the second season comes along, because due to fans wanting it, a studio will finally pick it up and do it all, because there's always like shows that are getting turned to anime and getting booted, but all they get is like one season.
I think that's mostly because the anime was just supposed to introduce the show, and the idea is like, oh, if you want to know what happens next, read the manga. I mean, like, I definitely could, and in some cases I have, but it's a different relaxing. It's a different way to relax that doesn't scratch that itch as much. Like I read books. I've gone through the Witcher books. I'm almost done with them, and that's a nice way to relax. But at the end, like I do it right before bed because I get tired. Kind of like, all right.
Which is what most people do. You're reading, your eyes get tired, and then you fall asleep.
Yeah, but when it comes to watching anime, I can wake up, like, have breakfast and like, all right, hey, new episode. I'll watch that for the entire day because I've got nothing else to do, and I'll feel great. Oh, okay, I'm not gonna say great because I've been in my bed all day, but I feel okay. I feel good. I can keep doing stuff.
With this one, obviously, he's a teenage boy, but with them being, well, they're 5 girls, so they're all the same age. Right?
They are all the same age.
Yeah, because they're quintuplet.
Yeah.
For some reason, I had a thought of like, well, maybe there's 5 girls, 5 daughters, and they're they have a different age range. I'm like, no, they're quintuplets.
Mm-hmm.
Never mind, they're all the same.
They're like the one that's like the 30 seconds older is definitely like, I guess, drawn and acts like the oldest one, and as well the one that's the youngest one by however many seconds definitely is drawn and acts like the younger one.
Yeah, she's like 2 minutes younger.
Yeah, but she's the one that's like, yeah, let's do everything. She's really like, she acts a lot younger for her age. She's the first one that actually is like willing to learn, because she hasn't developed pride yet, kind of deal. Where the older one, like she doesn't want to study right now because she'd rather just go and hang out with her friends, and like she's not being like anti it. It's just she's passively disagreeing because that's what older, cooler kids do. This is high school, so you're not allowed to have fun, but you're not allowed to show you're having fun. So that's kind of like her deal.
I love how, and this is something that you normally don't see with manga because they're always in black and white, but the girls are like color coded.
Yeah, they all have a different shade of hair color, which that's like when you go see the bride every so often in I don't want to say flash forwards because the whole show's a flashback, but when you see her in present day when she's getting married, she definitely has hair color. So I don't know if like that's just the hair color they chose because they need to have a hair color in there, or like anyone who can tell the difference between red and orange knows that, oh, okay, he's gonna marry this one.
Yeah, because before, like, usually the biggest things of them characters being identified is, one, their hairstyle.
Big anime thing.
Yeah. Hairstyle is really big in the anime, as well as their attire.
Yeah.
So even if you were to like do a grayscale of these girls, which one is which one from their pose, but also their silhouette of their hairstyle and also their clothing.
And they do a good job with that. Like, they have, like, the oldest one has really short hair. I think she is taller than the rest. One has two big old anime ponytails because, that's the style. One's always wearing headphones and is usually a little more, like, I don't want to say lazy. She's a little more shy, so her shoulders are kind of a little forward. And you can definitely tell who it is by like inking it all out and seeing how they stand.
Exactly. And that's, how you break them apart.
Yeah, this is our anime for cartoons, for any kind of art. That's visual art. It's very important.
Yeah, and I would say this one is definitely a good reference for someone who's at least doing character design. Is like, yes, these are all quintuplets, but yet they all have their own personality and you can identify them. But then again, I think that relates back to the mangas where even though the covers are colored, but the artwork itself is black and white.
The easy way to tell who's who.
And so they have to really emphasize on the character design.
It does make me think, like, if they're like eye colors are different, or like if they're I'd like to know if all of their faces are exactly alike, like all the exact, like the nose is the same because they're twins. Like they have to have something that's super similar about them.
Well, I mean, they're anime girls, so they don't have noses. Unless they turn their head, they don't have noses unless they turn their heads, And it really depends on the design of the character, or I'd just say design of the manga and the anime, because depending if you're looking at something like Hero Academia or something Shonen Sample or something that's a little bit more girly or slice of life, like depending on the studio and the way they're designed, like their noses are a big thing when it comes to, and even like the size of their mouths, really dictates on how they're drawn.
Yeah.
So.
I find that, like, especially when it comes to face, like a younger character will have vastly different proportions, and that's just to show off, like, hey, this person's younger. But I think that rolls back to what we talked about at the beginning of the episode. You're either 5 or 20.
Yeah, exactly. But with that, usually like the length of their body. So usually an adult will have, longer arms, longer legs, a longer torso, smaller head. It's the head counts, of the character, depending on, how many heads are they?
For people who aren't aware of like the animation standards, like you're not 6 feet tall, you're 8 heads tall. Like that's a very standard deal. A lot of times, like children are not that much. Chibi is just 2 heads tall because they're mostly face.
Yeah, and their heads is huge. And they have like a tiny body. But it's like, yeah, because that's what babies look like. Like they're all head. And then you look at a teenager. They're like, I don't know, like 5 heads tall, and you look at an adult, depending how much you want them to be, like they're certain heads tall, and that's how you work their proportions.
And that's that kind of that works well with the aging of a character, because if like, oh, this person's, if you just take a 6 foot tall adult and then just shrink them down to the size of a child, it's gonna look real strange. In fact, actually, if you look back at like some of the old like maybe Renaissance paintings, they didn't quite know how to proportion a child. So anytime a child was painted, it just looked like a tiny person, and it's adorable.
It's actually kind of funny. But yeah, that's actually a pretty good one. I think I might look into that one because it sounds pretty interesting.
It is a nice, it's a nice chill watch. Like if you want to, like, you wake up and like, I want to be awesome today. It's like My Hero Academia day. But if you're like, if you're up, it's raining outside, it's like, I'm not gonna go because I don't want to get wet. I'm gonna stay inside and chill all day. Quintessential Quintuplets is where it's at.
Yeah.
If you want something a little less like romancy, if that's like just not your deal, I don't blame you, and that's not for everybody. There's another, I don't want to bring another one up, but I'll talk about this for 2 seconds. There's another one called Mushishi. It's about a guy who is just a guy who wanders, I think it's supposed to be Japan, just cleansing spirits that may be like burdening people, but he doesn't go up and like, oh, purify, burn the evil spirits. It's just, no, hey, this spirit is causing trouble, but it just doing what it does, so he just kind of lets it go and makes it so it's not causing trouble anymore without killing it. It's a very chill, very like relaxing thing to either start or end the day with.
Okay, so moving on a little bit, we're getting a little late for time here, but that's okay.
Yeah, we've had fun.
Yeah, exactly. So to wrap up this episode, I'm going to talk about one more final show, something I've been watching, and something that's currently ongoing and finally got back to a second season. Is one of my favorite shows that I find absolutely hilarious. Is It Wrong to Try and Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon? Which is like a super long, it's like one of the longest anime titles, I've ever heard of, but it still makes me laugh every time I say it.
I've heard that rolling around, like, I don't know, like different like Reddit forums or just online somewhere, and I didn't know it was a TV show. I thought it was like some like running gag or joke or meme somewhere, but no, it's a whole, I think it's a second season show by now.
Yeah. So really what's happening right now, what's ongoing right now is the second season. They did have some other seasons. So what this story is, just to give a brief overview really quick, is that it's about the story of this boy. His name's Bell, and he's 14 years old. Again, reverting back to teenagers.
Of course.
So in this world, the gods themselves have come down to Earth. And it deals with all this different types of mythology, from Greek, Roman. There hasn't been any Egyptian gods yet, not that I'm aware of, but I'm really hoping they'll expand on those. But there's Indian gods and all the different types of mythology of ancient civilization and cultures that have come down from the heavens to live amongst the people. And one of the things that they do is that they take in these humans who they call their familia, and they become part of their family, and a person receives the blessing of the god, depending on whatever it is. So Bell, at first, in the first season, he discovers this god Hestia, who is a Greek god. And at first, he's like the only one. He's like the only person. And it's kind of funny because there's a little bit of romance there, because his god has like a huge crush on him. Like, that's kind of like one of the reasons why she like took him in, and it's just them all the time. So in the first season, you kind of get like all these little kind of like lovey-dovey things where he like completely just like runs away from her or avoids her, and just, like, she gets those little frustrated, all this other stuff, and plus like other girls who are like looking at her, and she's like, no. But one of the things that's kind of funny about it is because Bell, he like sees Hestia like his goddess, like he sees her like as this, he sees her as a god. Like, he doesn't see her as like as a girl. He sees her as this like, untouchable figure. But he kind of develops this crush on this other girl who's like incredibly strong.
Okay.
And like because she saves his life in the pilot, and like this whole thing, seasons, is all about him trying to catch up to her, because she's like incredibly strong, like ridiculous, like OP. So it's all about him wanting to catch up to her and be like with her, because he has like this, he's chasing her.
And it's kind of the love triangle deal where someone likes someone who likes someone else.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's kind of like it's not really so much a triangle because the girl that he's chasing is called Eins, and she's like this tall blonde, and her name's like Wallenstein. So she's like kind of looks like your ideal like German girl, which is
Whoa.
pretty popular in Japanese culture. You know, where they're
Mm-hmm.
tall, blonde, blue eyes, and that's what she looks like to him. He just wants to be like her because she's like incredibly strong. And one of the things that happens in this world is that there's these things called dungeons, which kind of reverts back to the title. That there's these, it's kind of like a video game aspect to it almost, where everyone kind of goes into these dungeons, and the only people who can go into the dungeons are these people called adventurers, and adventurers are the people who have received the blessing of a god
Mm.
and are in a familia. And pretty much all they do is go down to these dungeons and kill monsters. And much like a video game, they go deeper and deeper and deeper into the dungeons, and the different levels is just them just killing monsters, and the deeper they go, the stronger they are, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Kind of like a reverse tower, instead of a dungeon.
Yeah. The deeper you go, the stronger the demons are.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all about, eventually he develops a party, and there's more, all eventually he starts gathering more people, and in the second season it's all about them growing their familia and getting more members
Oh,
and growing.
so the Hestia is not a super well known god in the fiction. Uh,
No, or in Greek mythology.
or well, actually, I looked up who it is. Hestia is, let's see what it says here, is the virgin goddess of the hearth, like the right ordering of domesticity family. It's that's actually kind of interesting that the people they choose are their familia, which is like family, and Hestia is like the god of home, of family, of the hearth. That's a nice little tie-in.
Yeah, it is. And so he gets really, really strong. And the way the first season ended was like on this huge cliffhanger, because there's this huge mystery behind Bel, the character, and all these other gods start taking an interest in him because there's like all these secrets about him, and like this hidden power that he has. And what's kind of funny about this, kind of ties into the video game aspect, is like on their backs they have like their stats,
On their
which is really
backs.
weird. Yeah. So there's like this, because this one of the part when they receive their blessing is like this. They have like this living tattoo on their back that reads out their skills and abilities, and every day their god can like kind of like use like a piece of paper, and they just kind of just she's able to just take the paper and work her magic, because there's magic in this world.
Of course.
And yeah. And so like Hestia, she like does this thing on him with a piece of paper, and then like from there he can actually read like his stats and abilities, and like see if he has any skills or any magic or things that he's able to do. So as he gets stronger, he sees the stats go up and up and up, and
That
you see
that's
him
got to
get
be like
stronger.
satisfying. Like, yes, I am a whole 2 points stronger today. Like, you actually
Yeah,
quantify it. That's great.
yeah, exactly. It's kind of funny, and this is kind of where the video game aspect comes. And to make it even more of a video game is that the characters can, the adventurers, the people who receive the blessing of the god, is that they can level up. So
It's called level up. Like, this is just a
yeah,
video game.
it's like you are level 3, you are level 4, you are level 5, and so it's like that's the thing. And their strength reflects their leveling ability. So like Ainz, I think she's like a level 3 at the beginning of the first season, and Ainz is just like Bell, he's just a level 1. And it's like a big deal because he becomes level 2 in like record time, and like that's when people start taking an interest in him. And that's like when rumors and the people start taking notice of him, because he broke that record of becoming a
Oh,
level 2 faster than anyone else. And it's kind of weird because all this takes place in just one city.
it's
And
just one kind of big metropolis city that has a dungeon beneath it.
yeah, kind of, yeah. And you really about the rest of the world, and there's other cities and other dungeons and gods living like on other places of the world, but you don't really see it yet. In which I'm hoping that eventually they'll kind of expand beyond the city and maybe visit another city or something else of that sort, because right now they're pretty confined. It's like cities started building around these dungeons because people go into the dungeons, they kill them. And it's really funny is that when you kill the monsters, they drop like their core, which is like a crystal,
Mm-hmm.
almost like loot, pretty much.
This is experience incarnate.
Yeah, pretty much. And they drop like these crystals, like soul gems, and that becomes currency, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Because what they do is that the adventurers, they take like the soul gems, they turn them in, and they get money for them. And then those soul gems are in turn used for weapons, armor.
Okay.
You know, they're it's a resource, no different than gold or iron or something of that sort.
Yeah, you need so many crystals in order to make it this much stronger.
Exactly. But the one thing that was pretty great about it is that there's been spin-offs,
Mm-hmm.
and they've had a movie, I think. Yeah, they've had a film, and as well as like one thing that they had before was a spin-off series, which follows the history of Ainz, the his love interest,
Mm-hmm.
because there was like all these things that are happening parallel to each other within the anime. So that's something that they did with the spin-off, is like, oh, we're going to show you what was happening simultaneously when the first season was happening.
Yeah, like while this is a thing, like this is kind of happening side by side. You just didn't see it yet.
Exactly. So they're kind of expanding on introducing other characters, and then in the second season they kind of bring them together. And then again, it seems like they're going to do another spin-off where there's shows like, oh, okay, this is what this other character is doing. So it's kind of neat.
That's cool.
And yeah, I really like it a lot. And it's super hilarious. But what's really funny is that this kid is like 14 years old.
Yeah.
And he's like killing stuff. And he's like going through like all these things. But there's also this cute little love triangle that happens between Belle and Hestia, and then like, of course Ainz, but also there's this other another character who's kind of like a shapeshifter, like a little animal shapeshifter. Oh, I'm trying to think of her name, but she's super small. She's got to be like 4 feet tall. She's super tiny, and she's like one of these like she's one of the party members, but like she likes Belle. She's like really interested in him, but he's always dense, which is something that I mean, sometimes he is, sometimes he isn't, but at the time, like that's something that I kind of hate, that stereotype within, or that cliche within animes, is that the guy is like dense, but then again, he's like 14, so
Yeah, no one knows about anything other than probably killing monsters when you're 14.
exactly, so I don't know, but it's ongoing right now. I think the next episode, I think it's going to be like the 8th episode. It's going to be airing pretty soon, so I'm actually kind of really excited about that one and see what happens, because there's
of season 2.
Yeah, of season 2, because there's a lot of stuff that's happening, and again, more mystery. They've expanded the world a lot. Like they're showing more of what this city is, and more about the different clans and different gods, and the different abilities of what people have. Because there's multiple races. Like there's dwarves, there's fox people, there's elves, there's Amazons in this one, which really just look like buff tan chicks.
Sure.
Which is it's really hilarious. And so there's all these different races, and so really with the clan, the diversity, it seems like there's reputations among the gods. So and also Norse gods, because like the main rival of Hestia is like Loki, but they switch gender sometimes because Loki is a female.
Okay. It just kind of make it fit the harem aspect of it all.
Yeah, exactly. But there's no Thor yet. I'm hoping like maybe it'll be Thor or some of like the other more known gods. But you see some, like there's Apollo, which is kind of, you get this little rivalry happening between Hestia and Apollo, and Freya and a couple other known gods. But they seem to, since Hestia is the main character, one of the main characters, they seem to center around Greek gods at first.
Yeah.
But now they're starting to expand more and show a little bit more diversity amongst the mythologies.
I guess that kind of show, unless they're like saving it for a big like Loki reveal. Like if they've already moved on from Greek gods, Thor's in a bad spot to show up.
Yeah, but but then again, like they're all descended in the world, so some of them might still be in heaven, some might not be, or some of them are in different aspects of the world. They even have Asian gods. Like I think one of the gods, I can't remember his name, but I think one of them is like from Japanese mythology. So I'm really excited to see where they go, and it's ongoing. So it's a lot of good stuff.
It looks like I have it up right now. Some of the like the history of it. It looks like the manga still has a good ways to go. Like I see a lot of I see a lot of characters here that they don't like. They have an anime kind of like, oh, this is who Loki. This is what she looks like. But they also
Hmm.
have some other characters here that are the screenshot from a manga. So like there
Hmm.
is open space. They still have quite a ways to go to, or at least a ways to go to catch up.
Yeah, they're still writing, but you know they have the spin-offs that they're doing because there's always such a plethora of characters. But I think it's pretty cool, and it's super hilarious with the characters. Like it just makes me laugh sometimes the way they talk and interact with each other.
Hmm.
And especially Hestia, because she gets so jealous because she knows that Belle has like the hots for someone else, and she just gets frustrated because she's always trying to I guess flirt with him.
And he just doesn't listen.
Yeah, he doesn't listen, or like he just gets embarrassed and just like runs away.
Yeah,
Or
that's about 14.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because he's like, no, you shouldn't be dressed like this or whatever. But it's funny though because like she doesn't do anything either. Like she only goes like some of the way. Like she wants him to make the move or whatever. But it's just
Mm,
like just
I
just
want you
like
to want me.
yeah, yeah, kind of thing. I don't know. It's kind of, but it's cool though. I'm hoping like more they expand some a little bit more on the mythology, implement more gods, and kind of implement like the mystery that's behind Bell. So I don't want to spoil too much, but they kind of hinted at the end of the first season. But so far, the second season they haven't really addressed it yet.
Okay.
So I'm hoping like, well, maybe that'll be the finale, because something that happens I kind of hate sometimes with some anime is that if they get a second season, they kind of leave you with this cliffhanger on the finale. And it's like, okay, so like, well, I have these questions, I have these things, so what are you gonna do? But they always skip content
Hmm.
in the anime. They're like, okay, we want to get people fan service and all that. So a lot of times I turn to the manga because usually there's a lot more content.
Yeah, they have the time to flesh out a lot more deals because
Mm.
it's in manga it seems they want to, I don't want to say filler, but like they have the room to fit more things into one book, where in anime like animating something takes a lot of effort, and something that's so simple to do in manga, like, all right, this is going to take a long time. We have to cut some things to make this work.
Yeah, and you only have limited time for the show, whether it be like 24 minutes or a little bit longer. And then, if is it a 24 episode season? Is it a 12 episode season? They have to pick on what they think is going to work with the audience.
Hmm. There
All
are a
right.
lot of characters. I'm looking at the character list right now.
Yeah, yeah. There is a lot. A lot of voice characters. Obviously, you have your primaries and then secondary, tertiaries, so on and so forth. But I'm really thinking that it's going to start blowing up because with each new season, he adds more to people to their little roster of familia. So we'll see what comes next in the finales, because now it's the eighth episode is coming upcoming. So we'll see what we get.
See if the wait's all worth it.
Yeah, because I think it's only like a 12 episodes, or maybe like 15. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure, but it's only like a dozen or so
Yeah, it's not a full
episodes.
20 something season.
Yeah, so but it's been a long time since this first one, because like I said, they had the spin-off and then the film and all that. But I think the first season was back in 2015 was like the actual first season, and after that they had like the OVA and like the spin-off and all that. But now they actually started like
Started proper the second season.
exactly so where they left off. So all right.
I think this was very fun. We got a
Yeah,
lot done
yeah,
today.
yeah. We talked a lot about. So I just want to thank our listeners really quick for stopping by, whether if you're at home and gym or sleeping or on your drive home from work. Thank you for stopping by and listening to us. I'd like to thank Joe too.
You.
Yeah, for helping us out tonight. And Tiasha will be back to record our next episode. And for the next one, we're going to talk about some of our favorite things that are upcoming, as well as address, Tiasha's what she's been watching lately. So you guys will be able to listen and get what she's been watching lately, along with our next episode. So hopefully she'll be back, and we'll be back to work next week. So thank you, Joe, for helping us out with this episode today.
And thank you, Joe, for letting me help you out with this episode today.
Yeah. So, all right, everyone, you have a good night.
Hey guys, it's Tiasha Charles here from Animation Station. Just wanted to talk to you guys about our wonderful company, Elite 23 Global, which is a creative place for creative minds. We have a wonderful board of branches, which is fashion, media, and even gaming. We have a team of creative minds coming together to make projects we always wanted to start, like this one. Also, come check out our clothing store called Elite 23 Shopping to check out the hottest and even cutest styles. If you want something new, come to Elite 23 Shopping. See you guys later. Bye!